English translation 272nd contact. Sunday, 16th May 1999, 17 to 20 hours.
It is a pleasure to welcome you again today. Be welcome, my friend.
The joy is also mine. Greetings, Edward. But I did not come here specifically at your call, but because I had in mind anyway to visit you today or tomorrow. Obviously, however, a question occupies you because otherwise you would not have called for me.
That is right. It is about our internet system. We want to network and expand everything, also by adding a server that should be connected externally. In addition, I have the question whether we should do this at all, whether this is useful for us, and whether not any damage or disadvantages for us can develop from it. I have already discussed these matters with Bernadette, and she also felt that we should seek your advice on this matter. Of course, always provided that you can really give us advice, if you are sufficiently familiar with internet technology and all related factors.
Of course. Also in these matters I have the necessary knowledge to give some answers. Earthly technology in this respect, which is only in its early stages, is of course still extremely primitive compared to our technology, if I may say so, but for earthly terms it represents an enormous progress. But since we also have to deal with the still quite backward earthly technology of this kind, because this also belongs to our tasks, we are quite well educated in it. Out of this education, I would like to have guessed to your question that you must be extremely careful with regard to a server networking of external form, whereby I would like to guess that you renounce such a project for the time being. The danger that everything will be destroyed by external forces is enormous. You should consider only once the machinations of Calque Corf, who, together with many other enemies, which you and your mission as well as the group members have, only waits for you to work with an externally open network, in order to impair this then thoroughly and to destroy all data, etc. Certain secret services, government agencies, and the military must also be considered in this regard, as must many private individuals and sectarian organizations who are hostile to you and your work, to the members of your group and to your contacts with us, and who are out for total destruction. For this reason, but also for various other reasons, it is advisable that you refrain from your project and only realize it at a later time, when the entire technology offers more security with regard to what is explained, and also the technical equipment, etc., has become more efficient and less susceptible. But this should be the case in 5-7 years at the earliest. The current state of the art in this form alone is not yet so mature on the Earth that it could be regarded as fully reliable. This means, however, that everything is still in the advanced stages of development and is therefore not only insecure and susceptible to damage, but also costly. Therefore, if a device fails, it must be repaired or replaced, and this causes new horrendous expenses. Not to mention the hassle and data damage, etc., that can result from a failure. The worst damage, however, is caused by the enemies who are really waiting for you to feed yourselves into the public network with a server, etc., after which they can begin their work of destruction. Particular attention should be paid to the so-called computer viruses and other destructive possibilities, which have not yet been mentioned on the Earth with regard to internet technology, etc., because there is no knowledge about them yet, or because work is only being done on these destructive possibilities. And really functioning and mature security systems do not yet exist that could completely or even only to a high percentage prevent malicious or deliberate damage and destruction. In this respect, too, everything is still in its infancy. And if advertising claims otherwise, it is a lie. Therefore, If you still wish to have a network in relation to your computers, then you should and may only consider such a network in the internal area for the time being. In external form, an extension is in no wise recommendable, at least still today. An external connection in the form of internet and email is only recommended if there is no internal attachment connected to it, which can be penetrated from the external side.
Piero and Stefan said that there are good antivirus programs you can rely on.
Such programs certainly exist, but they cannot be described as safe in any wise. Technology does not stand still, and consequently new possibilities are found for computer viruses to penetrate the systems unnoticed and destroy them. Also, new forms of computer viruses and other computer destruction possibilities will be invented and developed, against which the existing security programs are useless. Piero and Stefan are a bit too euphoric about the security of computer virus scanning programs. To say more about this is actually superfluous. But I will gladly inquire with our surveillance group and give you further information if this should be necessary.
But that does not have to be the same, because I still have some questions I want to ask.
Of course. I will leave after your questions for a short time to possibly get more information and then report back to you. No, the person responsible for the matters discussed in earthly space is called Zaphanat Ptaah.
I beg your pardon? What is the person's name?
Zaphanat Ptaah?
Interesting. A man's name that somehow seems familiar to me. How do you spell the name?
In 2 words, the name was written by the Egyptians in Joseph's time, so Zaphanat Ptaah, as I tell you here. We still use this name today, but as a word written as follows, Zaphanat Ptaah.
Is the name still known on the earth today?
It is, yes. It is written as follows, Zaphanat Ptaah. To my knowledge, however, it should no longer be in use.
You said that the name existed in Egypt in Joseph's time. Are you talking about Jacob's son Joseph, who was thrown into a dry water hole by his brothers, and then sold as a slave to the Ishmaelites, and sold off to Egypt by them?
I have spoken of this.
Then I am right. That is why I know the name. The Pharaoh at that time set Joseph as administrator over all of the country of Egypt, because he could interpret the Pharaoh's dreams, which referred to 7 fat and 7 lean years. This Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name and called him Zaphanat Ptaah. Wait a minute, I will look in the Bible right away. It should be written in the Bible. Here is the Luther Bible. Wait a minute. Moses' first book should be the story. No, no, not either. But here, chapter 41, Pharaoh's dreams, Joseph's interpretation. Exaltation and care for Egypt. Here, verse 33. Now look to Pharaoh for an understanding and wise man whom he will put over the land of Egypt. Blah, 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 blah. No, not here either. Blah, blah, no. Until the next chapter there is nothing. They simply embezzled the name. But wait, maybe there is something in the Jewish Pentateuch. Wait, I already have the book there. Chapter 41 there, yes. Here, verse 33. Next, here, yes, verse 45. It says, And Pharaoh called Joseph Zaphanat Ptaah, and gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On, as wife. So there we have what was revealed in the Luther Bible. Therefore I know the name. But what is interesting is that it is still in your language. To my knowledge, the name means something like the Savior or something. Is that true?
The meaning is actually he who brings salvation.
Is there also a female version?
Of course. The name is the same, but without etch at the end of the word. So Zaphanat Ptaah.
She, the one that brings salvation.
That corresponds to correctness. In our language, however, we use the short form he who brings salvation and she who brings salvation.
That is the same thing that comes out in the end. Anyway, thank you for your information. May I ask you something else now?
Of course.
Thank you. Good. Well, it was on the 8th of May, on the evening of the passive General Assembly, when Klaus Wentz, a passive member from Germany, showed me a photo and various enlargements of it. On the picture you could see him and the passive members Philip McCaney and Rita Kjohen from Canada, photographed by the German passive member Bernhard Kellner. Well, in the photo taken above the Simya Se Silver Star Center, there was something like a small gray-black cloud in the background above a spruce top, which at first glance could not be defined as anything specific. Only the enlargements of the little cloud resulted in something interesting. Namely, an object became visible, which for me was clearly a beamship of your design. The photo was taken on the 9th of May, 1998, at 13 HHRs, during lunchtime at last year's Passive General Assembly. Now for my question. Is it possible that one of you was wandering around in the center environment at that time and let yourself be captured on the film, willingly or unwillingly? Do you know anything about it, or can you inquire about it?
The passive members Philip McCaney, Rita Kjogen, and Klaus Wentz, taken on 9th of May, 1998, 13 Zelen hours, during the lunch break at the 9th Passive Members General Assembly. Photo, Bernhard Kellner. Copy of an enlargement of the original photograph taken in the photo lab of a friend of Rita Kjogen's in Canada.
I remember this very well. Because Florina and I were flying in your airspace at the time, because we were observing foreign flying apparatuses that were also flying around in your immediate and wider airspace. Like ourselves, they were shielded from any view to humans from the Earth, so neither these foreigners nor ourselves could be observed. Our advanced technology also allowed us to remain invisible to the foreigners, so they had no idea of our presence. But if our flying apparatus is still visible in the picture you mentioned, then this could only be captured on film for a tiny fraction of a second, at a moment when the automatic safety system changed the frequency of the visual protection shield. A process that can become necessary when foreign objects, for which you want to remain invisible and unlocatable, get too close. However, if the flying apparatus becomes visible for a tiny fraction of a second during such an operation, this only happens on the side facing away from the foreign object, which ensures that our flying apparatus cannot be seen or located. But if our flying apparatus was photographed by the person you mentioned, then this corresponds to an almost unbelievable luck and a coincidence that occurs only once among millions of similar cases, when the automatic visual protection switch is delayed for a fraction of a second.
Legendary. And the foreigners? What kind of beamships or flying apparatus do they have, and what do they want?
Their flying apparatuses bear a certain resemblance to ours, and could therefore easily be confused by the uninitiated and ignorant. What the foreigners want is easy to explain. They appear once every 70 to 80 years on the Earth, taking care of all sorts of things that reach into political as well as military and scientific matters, whereby their aim is to make an official appearance at the appropriate moment and to establish open contact with the Earth humans.
And were there contacts with them at earlier times? That is to say, did these foreigners interfere in the earlier concerns of the Earth humans?
That was to some extent the case, yes.
And can you please tell me something about these foreigners? For example, what they look like and where they come from? And why did you not ever tell me about them?
A surprise by Philip McCaney, Canada. On Saturday, the 9th of May, 1998, during the lunch break of the passive members' general meeting, Rita Keown and I were hanging out on the road above the Simya Se Silver Star Center, 8495 Schmidruti, at about 13 hours, and having a good time together. We are both passive members from Canada and had traveled here especially for the passive group general meeting the day before. While we were chatting, I said to Rita that I would like to have a photo of this place with the two of us in it, so I looked around for someone who could take the photo I wanted. At that moment I saw Klaus Wentz, a German passive member, walking along the road towards Hamburg. When we called out, Klaus rushed over to us and was happy to take the picture of Rita and me. Rita gave Klaus her camera and he took the picture she wanted, after which I also gave Klaus my own camera, with which he took another picture so that Rita and I each had a photo of our own. Whilst we were still busy taking pictures, we saw Bernhard Kellner, another German passive member, walking along the same path that Klaus had walked on earlier. Rita immediately called for Bernhard, and so he also joined us, and at our request, took another picture each with our cameras, on which Klaus, Rita, and I could now be seen. As a joke, I said to Rita, "All we need now is a ship in the background." Everyone laughed at my joke. Back in Canada, Rita called me excitedly about a month later and told me that she had now developed and enlarged her pictures, and that she thought there was a ship in the background of the picture Bernhard had taken of us. I immediately looked for the same picture in my photos but couldn't see anything. Rita said that she would send me the picture by email. 2 minutes later, I had the email with Rita's picture and I saw a small disc-shaped cloud on it. However, it was not in my picture but only in Rita's picture. I thought it was impossible that a cloud could appear and disappear again in just 30 seconds. At first, I was very happy about the picture, but I was unsure because I know that many human beings imagine that they see UFOs, even though there is no such thing. Rita told me that one of her friends could analyze this picture. 2 weeks later, Rita sent me another email with the image analysis. This showed that the supposed cloud could not be one because its center was obviously metallic. Again, I was delighted, but before I accepted what the analysis showed me, I wanted Billy to see the image so that he could confirm that we had also actually photographed a ship. I was very disconcerted that one picture showed no cloud, while the next picture, taken only seconds later, showed it so clearly. Rita sent Klaus a copy of the photo because he was also in it and she wanted to make him happy. He brought this photo with him to the Passive Group General Assembly on Saturday, the 8th of May, 1999, and showed it to Billy that evening, who immediately confirmed from the enlargements that the supposed cloud was obviously a Pleiadian-Plejaren beam ship. When Billy told me about it the next day, I shot up with sheer joy. My secret wish, which I had so spontaneously dressed up as a joke, had come true so unexpectedly that now, when I received the confirmation, I felt as if the heavens had opened for me, and as if our extraterrestrial friends had given me a very personal gift.
Original letter.
Regarding your last question, it was not the time. It is just now given. I am not yet allowed to officially answer the first question.
Too bad, then another time.
4.
No thanks. I do not want to know for myself either. So I can always say with a clear conscience that I do not know anything about it. So let us move on to the next question. Methuselah. The Bible claims that he was about 970 years old. A time on Earth that is tremendously long for a human being. Quetzal once told me that this biblical indication of time did not correspond to the truth, for the number 970 like other high numbers in the Bible or in other works, did not correspond to years but to lunar months with 28 days, whereby 1 year is to be reckoned with 13 lunar months. Accordingly, the biblical Methuselah would not have turned 970 years old, but in reality only at 74.6 years. For 970 divided by 13 lunar months of 28 days each, which results in a 364-day year, is calculated on a result of 74.6153846,153. That is, on 74.6 years.
Quetzal's explanation corresponds to the fact as well as your calculation is correct.
Again, something concerning the photographed beamship. I shall receive the corresponding negative and some object enlargements in the next few days. Is it possible that you can come here for a short time to view the material and determine whether it is actually Florina's beamship or a foreign object?
Unfortunately, this cannot be arranged because already in a few hours I have to do my duties again, which will lead me very far away. However, I will instruct Florina to come to you when you call her to inspect the material and clarify whether the photographed object is indeed her flying apparatus or not.
Also good. Thank you very much. I will then, when she has clarified the matter, integrate her answer and statement into this contact report, or attach them to it, so that everything that belongs together is together. By the way, I also talked to McCaney to get a small description of the photo coming from him. A small report, which I will also attach to this contact report.
Do as you please.
I will, yes. Yes. I wanted to ask you how things are with you. When there are floods, avalanches, and landslides, etc., if such events still appear at all, since you can also influence the weather and certainly prevent such occurrences.
It is true that we can control the weather, but we do not do this within the limits of the natural course of the weather and the climate, etc. Stop it or change it profoundly. On the whole, we give nature and all its powers free rein.
Then there will be floods, avalanches, landslides, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, etc.
Of course.
And how do you conduct yourselves in these matters? With us on the Earth, it is the case that many human lives are demanded by such events, and that millions and billions in damages are caused. Houses are flooded by floods, but also a lot of fertile land as well as roads and all kinds of other things. Volcanic eruptions and violent storms also cause immense damage, as do avalanches and landslides. How do you deal with such events?
We do not have any problems with it. Neither with violent storms, avalanches, volcanic eruptions, landslides, floods, etc. Neither humans nor buildings, etc. are damaged by such occurrences, not even by earthquakes. All buildings of any kind are earthquake and storm-proof, and are secured against earthquakes and storms, so that no forces of nature can harm them. However, this also means that all buildings of any kind must stand on completely safe ground and must not enter any danger zones. Thus, for example, no buildings may be constructed in places where there are steep slopes, where sooner or later, perhaps only in centuries, avalanches or mountain slides could descend. Thus, no buildings of any kind may be constructed in the vicinity of volcanoes or in the vicinity of their lava beds. It is also forbidden to construct buildings on the shores of lakes, seas, rivers, streams, and creeks. And so it is forbidden to destroy floodplain forests and use them for construction purposes, as it is also forbidden for the extensive flat areas which absorb the water produced by floods. According to the respective waters, a minimum distance from the shore must be maintained for buildings to be constructed, as must a minimum height above the highest water level measured since time immemorial. For standing or flowing waters, for example, The rule applies that a minimum height of 3 meters above the known highest water level must be maintained according to earthly measures, while the minimum distance to the shore, also according to earthly masses, must be 70 meters. If the water is a sea, the minimum height above the known highest water level for buildings shall be 3 meters, while the minimum distance from the shore shall be 200 meters.
I think it is reasonable. Quite contrary to what is offered here on Earth in this respect, where such safety concerns are not taken care of and everything is built without hesitation. Houses are built into endangered avalanche and mountain slide slopes as well as into volcanic areas. Alluvial forests are cleared and built on with houses, as also happens with the flat areas, which are actually flood areas, etc. and so on. But this is also an evil of irrationality and overpopulation, because the more humans there are on our planet, the rarer the building land becomes, which is why more and more areas endangered by natural elements with houses and hotels, as well as with factories and cable cars, etc., are built on. But apart from that, the human of the earth is somehow simple-minded since time immemorial, because as far as one can think back, the earth human has always built their huts, houses and other things directly next to the water and the mountains, etc. In addition, there are also interventions to nature, such as the creation of gigantic reservoirs, the straightening of rivers and streams, etc., and the destruction of alluvial and floodplain forests and so on.
All this is correct. But the greatest evil is the overpopulation, which demands more and more building land and living space, which inevitably means that areas with residential buildings and other buildings have to be built on, which are more or less endangered with regard to floods, violent storms, landslides, volcanic activity, and avalanches, etc. Due to the mass of the overpopulation, the safe building areas have long since disappeared. But there are also many other problems caused by overpopulation.
That is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Actually, it is so that by the already existing and still further growing mass of humankind, not only the food or hunger problem exists, but also many other problems, which are never considered by the scientists and experts, as well as by the stinkers and know-it-alls. These include, for example, all the things we have just discussed, but also air and environmental pollution, the destruction of oxygen sources, and the resulting deterioration of the air we breathe, which is increasingly used by more and more people, then the dwindling of all vital resources, the emergence and spread of new or old diseases and epidemics that appear again, the pollution of the waters, the impairment and destruction of the atmospheric and stratospheric shields, such as by CFCs and the HARP system and other criminal and felonious machinations. Then the destruction of the soil by excessive fertilization and nuclear radiation, etc., which destroys particularly fertile land intended for food production. Of course, an unbelievable amount of fertile land with houses and other buildings is built on and destroyed. Incredibly cruel mass animal husbandry and mass animal fattening is practiced, and millions of cattle and other animals are bred and slaughtered to feed pampered domestic cats and dogs. Cattle that do not belong in any human habitats or living spaces anyway, which also applies to other animals of any kind. But this is not enough for the whole madness of the overpopulation, because there are still many other things added, such as the increased and more frequently appearing friction and quarrels among family members and between neighbors and strangers, but also between different peoples, from which more and more acts of war arise. More and more, some states interfere in the affairs of other states, and thus exert an unparalleled terror under the mantle of legality. Just take the present example of the Americans who, as warmongers with NATO, are throwing Serbia and Kosovo to the ashes, with many innocent people having to give their lives. Not to mention what the Serb leader Milosevic is afforded as a human slaughterer and genocide. Of course, this guy is an unparalleled mass killer, but the problem of stopping this guy and his wife, who is as bad as he is, could have been solved in a different and simpler manner, by a pure emergency response that would have been that that a Security Council decision had sent a special task force to Belgrade to remove Milosevic and his wife, who were also war criminals, from circulation, in whatever form it would have been necessary. It would have been an emergency response which would have prevented hundreds of thousands or even millions from suffering. But what is now being done with the war only amounts to getting the arms and war industry in all NATO countries, and especially in America, up to speed again, so that so many millions of workers can be employed again, and so that the ruble can roll again. This also applies to the fact that, after the end of the war in Kosovo and Serbia, everything that has been leveled to the ground must be rebuilt. And of course, not only half the world will donate countless billions of dollars, marks, euros, and francs to this end, but will also provide the appropriate experts for reconstruction. It has already been announced that the European Union will provide at least 8 billion euros annually for reconstruction in Serbia and Kosovo. This is equivalent to about 13,000,000 Swiss francs. And of course, Switzerland will not hold back to give this amount a huge boost. This is the way of budgeting on the earth, my friend, so that the ruble will roll again and the unemployed will have work again. The assertions of the most diverse statesmen and the military men involved in this lousy war, which under certain circumstances could still become the trigger for the Third World War, that only humanity should act, and a humanitarian catastrophe should be prevented, are only protective assertions, because the real truth lies in the fact that the whole madness is based only on profit-making and on the joy of playing Kriegerless war games, as well as on the fact that by the war, certain new weapon systems can be tested, and by an occupation of the country, the own national sphere of power can be extended.
What you are saying is dangerous, but right, and there would be a lot more to say. But let us stay out of these things, because the course of things takes its course one way or another. And since time immemorial, it has been the case that the earth human usually only becomes wise through great harm, if they bring about events and situations through irrationality and illogicalness that bring them hardship and misery.
There you speak a true word. Then there is a question I asked you a long time ago, but you still have not answered it. Obviously you have forgotten the matter. It is that you promised to clarify when the first extraterrestrial humans came to the Earth. We have already talked about it once, whereupon I also received an indication of the time, but you doubted it and explained that you still could not give exact details about it.
That is right. We had to revise our previous research because new clarifications and research have produced new results. These, however, do not mean that they are final, because certain indications indicate that we must go back even further into the past in order to come across the time when alien human life forms were moving on Earth for the first time.
Then let us hear what time period you have already researched.
We have found traces up to 234 million years in the past. These are our latest findings and discoveries. However, I have not forgotten your question about these things, but I have been silent about it so far, because we are still researching and do not have any final results yet.
Then I now have a question of a special kind, a controversial question, so to speak, that arose during a conversation. Here on Earth, the entire fauna is simply called the animal kingdom. All non-human creatures can be described as animals, as the encyclopedias, etc. say. Thus, with this term, all mammals, all fish, insects, birds, reptiles, bacteria, and viruses, etc. are contained. The controversial question is whether this is correct in this form or not. If so, then well. If not, then what do we have to talk about?
According to our understanding and linguistic usage, the question is to be answered in such a manner that a serious error of definition is committed in earthly languages in the relationship you mentioned. Because animal or beast is not simply animal or beast. If the language and meanings of the words are to be used correctly, The different genres must be separated according to their designations. In this sense, animals are exclusively life forms that suckle their offspring and bring them into the world already viable. What does not fall under these forms are birds and fish, insects, bacteria, viruses, as well as reptiles and dinosaurs, although the latter no longer exist on the earth. The term animal has arisen on Earth in the newer languages from incorrect interpretations of old word terms, such as the Old Swedish word djur, which was used to describe wild mammals. In the lack of understanding of the real terms of the languages and their words, the term for the animal, thus djur, etc., was taken over also into the other earthly languages, completely according to their linguistic characteristics. Consequently, the animal term became naturalized in all languages.
Well, we will now have to live on Earth with this misunderstanding. But I have always been of the opinion that all critters must be separated according to their species.
Then you were probably the one who...
I was, yes. That was my last question, too.
Then I want to visit Zafanatpaniach now. I will call you when I get back if you are not here.
Okay, until then.
Sunday, the 16th of May, 1999, 18:45 hours.
Nothing new came up, so only what I already explained was to say. If you do not mind, I would like to talk to you about 2 more things.
Of course. Have you already informed Florena?
Yes, she is waiting for you to call her.
I guess it will be Wednesday or Thursday, because until then I will have the negative and the image enlargements for sure. So then what is your concern?
Thursday, the 20th of May, 1999, 19:15 hours.
Be welcome. You know what this is about. Here are the image enlargements, and this is the negative. Please take a close look and tell me if it is your beam ship.
Yes, I cannot see anything on the negative, at least nothing I can define. The enlargements here? Yes. They bear some resemblance to the contours of our flying apparatuses, but with the best will in the world, I cannot say whether it is actually identical to our flying apparatus. Therefore, if you allow me, I will take both with me and examine them with our capabilities and devices.
Of course. How long will it take?
It will certainly take 1 to 2 hours.
Oh, I see. I thought it would take several days.
Good, then I want to go now. Goodbye.
I will be back here in 2 hours.
Then I will orient myself afterwards. Thursday, 20th May 99, 21:35 Hurrius.
So, did you find anything out now?
Certainly.
Copy of the enlargement made by Florena using the Pleiadian-Pleiaren photographic technique on 20th May 1999 of the photograph taken by Bernhard Kellner on 9th May 1998.
The negative is not very good in relation to the object above the tree, but I managed to sharpen everything with our equipment in such a manner that the flying apparatus became clearly recognizable. This is undoubtedly our flying apparatus with which Ptaah and I were traveling in your area on the 9th of May at 13 hours. However, we did not use the flying apparatus that I usually use, but one that is probably ordered for our duties, but is not assigned to our technology and therefore has some external modifications.
But you can still think of it as a Pleiadian-Pleiaren ship. At least I thought of it as such.
The confusion is understandable, as there are also various similarities with this flying apparatus that are deceptively similar to our technology. But now my friend calls me again the duty.
One moment more. Please tell Ptaah that I sent Bruni his greetings and wishes, and that she was very happy about it and thanked him very much. The group members also thank him for his greetings, to which I have already been able to convey them.
Thank you very much. And also I send greetings to all if you want to pass on these greetings. I too will give greetings and thanks to Ptaah.
Of course, I will greet everyone. Goodbye, and thank you very much for all your efforts.
That was gladly done by me. Goodbye.
Salome.